Welcome, everybody, back to the Friar Talk podcast and YouTube channel. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about this Padres team after a walk-off win by Jose Azocar last night. Super fun win. They're down 2-0. It looks like there's no offense. They generate a couple of runs. Jake Cronenworth saves the game with a diving catch. Manny Machado doesn't come up in two situations where he's basically come up every single year, and the Padres still find a way to come and win. So today we just wanted to talk about, how good this team can actually be because we were talking before recording right now, and it feels a lot different this year than it did last year. And you look at this roster, you compare it to last year's roster, and it's night and day in the pitching department. So we wanted to get into this a little bit. Also have Matt Devine on as well. So Matt, you want to introduce yourself, give a little plug to your show, and then let us know how you feel about this Padres team. How good can they be this season?
Absolutely. Thank you also, Matt, who also went to Cal Poly. Love to see it. Isaac, what's up, my guy? Appreciate you guys for having me on. I've been a big follower for a while, so I'm excited to talk some Padres baseball. My name is Matt Devine. I am one of the 3 members of the Divine Sports Gospel. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, TikTok. So if you guys want to check us out, big Padres fans, tweet about the pods all the time. So feel free to check out our channel. But super excited to be on. Last night's game was absolutely incredible, right? So I was watching. We actually recorded last night as well, and we were recording, and we had the game on in the background. And I saw Tyrone Taylor hit that 2-run single, and I'm like, it might not be our day. Like, it's all good. Like, 2 outs, right? 2 strikes. I'm like, that always kind of sucks when like they get hits like that. So I didn't really think anything of it. I kind of moved on, and then just Nick Martinez battling and the bases loaded situation in the 4th inning, where no outs, bases loaded, gets 2 outs. Jake Cronenworth makes the play of the game. Just like little stuff like that, right? And it kind of reminded me a little bit of the last season when we played the Dodgers and Tim Hill came into that game and we made that double play with him and Tatis, where that won us the game pretty much. And it's like little plays like that you remember deep into the season is like, oh, like if that ball goes through, we lose that game. Let's be completely honest, right? But like little stuff like that has been happening more often with Bob Melvin, with this new team, that I feel like it's not even a coincidence anymore. I feel like we're just a better baseball team. If you continue to have more and more things that you're looking at, like Joe Musgrove has 8 quality starts. He started 8 games. Sean Manaea has 6 quality starts. When you look at our team now, compared to even 3 days before spring training or before the season was going to start, we traded Chris Paddock, which I always liked Chris Paddock and I wish him the best. It absolutely sucks that he has to have Tommy John surgery. But when you look at that deal, we traded Chris Paddock for Taylor Rogers. Taylor Rogers has been the best closer in baseball right now. He looks honestly unhittable at times. If we didn't have Taylor Rogers, Luis Garcia would probably be our closer. And as you guys have seen, we probably would not have as many wins as we have right now. So that is incredible. Sean Manaea, having Sean Manaea as your pitcher over Chris Paddock right now, Chris Paddock wouldn't be pitching. Like our entire roster. Mackenzie Gore got dropped out of the top 100 prospects last year. He's coming in and he's looking like he's going to win NL Rookie of the Year. Like things are happening this year that, of course, as Padres fans, it's obvious. It's very easy for us to be optimistic because we haven't ever really won anything, to be completely honest. But it feels like things are in the works. It feels like the dynamic of the team chemistry are high. It looks like everybody's having a good time, and the players are just better. And this is without the top 5 player in baseball, Fernando Tatis Jr. Our best baseball player hasn't even played yet, and we're one of the best teams in the league. Manny Machado has put the team on his back, figuratively, literally, however you want to say it. And what's crazy is we won that game last night with Manny Machado leaving the bases loaded in the 7th and leaving runners on 1st and 3rd in the 9th. We literally won that game with both of those things happening. There's something in the water. It's the Bob Melvin water, dude. I'm loving it. But little rant there. But Isaac, what you feeling, my guy?
Go to rant, bro. Go to rant. I really like it. I like the enthusiasm and everything. It's super fun, man. I mean, you look at this Padres team right now. You're right. It's just different. It's something about this team. You look at Manny Machado. He leads all position players in WAR. You look at Joe Musgrove. I believe he leads the league in quality starts. He's top 7 in WAR for pitchers right now. Taylor Rogers leads the league in saves, as well as being a top 3 reliever in WAR right now. I mean, you got guys that are just being flat out some of the best players in baseball. Not only that, you're not getting production from Jake Cronenworth, Luke Voigt, some guys that have been productive in their past. And when they start clicking, this Padres team is going to be even more dangerous. To me, it's not a matter of if they start clicking. Jake is my guy. He's going to click. Luke Voigt, a little, less optimistic, but he's proven he can hit for power. He's done it before. He can do it still. You look, and then you look at the guys you're still getting production from. You're finally getting production from Ha-seong Kim. He looks fantastic. He's one of the best shortstops in baseball right now. I said before the season, he needs to be somewhat like last year's Tommy Edman for the Cardinals. He's that this year, but Tommy Edman right now is a top 5 player in baseball. If you look at it from WAR, he's absurd. So unfair to compare him to that, but comparing to Tommy Edman last year, that's a good one. And then you're getting production from guys like Jose Azocar, who hit the walk-off last night. You're just getting production from guys you didn't expect to. That's a really good sign when you're thinking, oh, man, what's going to happen when we get production from the guys we expected? You're going to get production from them. You're doing it without a top 5 player in baseball, the most electrifying player in baseball. So, I don't know, man. Something's different about this Padres team, and we talked about it earlier. The difference between this baseball team with Bob Melvin and Jace Tingler is night and day. Bob Melvin is a top 5 manager in baseball. And the fact that AJ Preller was able to bring him in is, I don't know how he did it, but that is fantastic. AJ Preller deserves props for that. Not only that, for that Taylor Rogers trade. What an amazing trade. I mean, like you said, if we didn't have him, Luis Garcia would probably be our closer. Maybe even Robert Suarez. We've seen him blow. I mean, it hasn't been pretty from those guys. Luis Garcia has been decent, Robert Suarez looked better lately. But if we don't have Taylor Rogers, this might be the worst bullpen in baseball. And it's just a very exciting time right now for us Padres fans. The energy is different. I love that Polaroid thing they got going on. That shit is so sick. I love the swag chain. I think this might be even cooler, though. Correct me. I mean, feel free to disagree. I think it's even cooler.
I think it's different. I like the Polaroid a lot because it's not as flashy. And trust me, I like the swag chain. And I thought them selling this swag chain at Petco was awesome. Like, I think that's like all the little kids rocking the swag chain, like the grandpas rocking the swag chain. I thought that was lit. But like the Polaroid is just a cooler, and it kind of is more of a San Diego vibe, right? Like Joe Musgrove, Manaya, like they seem like the kind of dudes that will like go to the beach and like take pictures and stuff. Like it's kind of like the vibe of the team is like chill. It doesn't look like we're like ever stressed, which I think is like totally different than old Padres teams, which is pretty lit.
Absolutely, 100%. You look at this Padres team too; they're just vibing right now, man. Like the Padres team is just a vibe right now, and you look at it from top to bottom. They're top in productive outs in all the small categories that don't show up in the stats. The Padres are amongst the top of them, like productive outs. I forgot the rest, but they're amongst the top. So, I mean, this Padres team is doing everything right. They're not hitting all these home runs the way that, the modern day of baseball expects teams to. That says if you don't hit this amount of home runs, you're not going to win. The Padres are defying that right now. They are playing small ball baseball in the form of a Trent Grisham bunt single for an RBI. In terms of a single by Jose Azocar, which started with a Jerkson Profar ground ball to second base. They're just doing that repeatedly. And every time this Padres team is down, it's kind of the same as last year, except from July to September. If they were down, you knew they were going to lose. But before that, it was, who cares? They're going to win. Like, they still have a chance to win. That's what this Padres team feels like right now. And that's without a guy that puts up 7 WAR. So this is honest. This might be the most talented team in Padres history. If you're a 98 fan, I'm sorry. I completely see where you're coming from because that team was stupid stacked. But the way this pitching rotation is right now and the way this team is just putting up runs, I don't know. This team, super fun to watch right now.
100%. And you start looking into it, and it's not even just Fernando Tatis that's going to enter this lineup. You have Fernando Tatis coming back. You brought up Jake Cronenworth. Right now is barely hitting over 200. Those numbers are going to go up. Most of his metrics show okay, he's not chasing at a weird rate. Like, he's going to bounce back. I fully expect that to happen. Luke Voigt is playing horrendous, and Luke Voigt is an 850 OPS guy, and he can easily hit 25 plus home runs a season. So he's been in a massive slump. Then you look at, you guys didn't even bring up the bullpen. The bullpen has been bad. Like, this is a team that's winning late in games, and they're coming from behind, and their bullpen's been bad. Well, hopefully you have Palm back. That's a big if. But if you get Palm back, that's massive, because having Drew Pomeranz, if he is healthy, and Taylor Rogers would be absolutely disgusting at the back end of the bullpen. But not only him, Morejon is pitching in rehab right now. Castillo's pitching in rehab right now. Like, you have guys that are coming back. Those are 2 lefties right there that are really, really good players. So I think we're going to see some guys coming back. People kind of don't really talk about Pierce Johnson being out has actually been a really big blow to this team, and they're still able to stay above water late in games. The Padres right now are one of the best teams at scoring after the 6th inning. They get to teams late a lot. I mean, I don't know if you guys feel like this, but every time the Padres are in extra innings, I'm like, oh yeah, this is they score the run every time. I feel like there hasn't been maybe like once this year. No, they won a game in the 11th inning. I remember that. So there's been a couple times this year, but it basically feels like they come up, they sacrifice the guy over, and then someone else sacrifices him in. All that little small ball stuff, like you're talking about, productive outs, Isaac, you can see it. If you watch game in and game out, you notice these things. Last year, the Padres were not doing that. The Padres were losing runs because they were batting guys in weird places. There was no consistency in the lineup. Guys were hitting, and then guys would be on fire, and then for some reason, like they would never be able to be in like an opportunity to bring guys in. It was just everything was always off, especially from like July on last year. And then you also look back and you go, well, what was the big issue then? Well, there was 2 starters on the team, so you'd have 2 starters, and you'd either toss out Ryan Weathers or back-to-back bullpen days or Velasquez and Arrieta. It was just a mess late in the season. That's not going to happen this year. Clev is on IL right now, but he's barely pitched. Blake Snell is going to pitch his second game tonight. Like, you haven't had 2 of those guys that, honestly, like, you traded a lot of your farm system for, but those 2 guys, and they haven't even been really a part of this team, and you're still winning. Now, I think you got to give props to a couple guys that have just played unbelievable. Manny Machado is the clear frontrunner for MVP right now. Mackenzie Gore, he is looking like he's going to be the rookie of the year if he plays like how he has been, especially with Seiya Suzuki slumping lately as well. So you have 2 guys there that could potentially, win a rookie of the year and an MVP. And it's still early on in the year, but I do think it's significantly different because last year it always felt like, okay, like when this team starts hitting its stride again, when they start hitting their stride again, but they were cooked. The bullpen was cooked. Starters were going 5 innings, 4 innings most of the time. Even now, it's not. And the other thing is, you look at the starters' numbers, it's not like you're like, well, Sean Manaea is playing way better. He's going to fall back down to earth. Like, no, he's putting up his normal numbers. He's just pitching 7 innings into the game, and he's allowing 2 runs, and he's playing well. Like, it's a lot more of that, a lot more consistency. And the amount of games that the Padres have won this year where it's 3-2 or 2-1 or something, that's the difference for this team right now. Winning these small games where you're just, able to kind of scrap out wins, it's huge. You add Fernando Tatis, you add an outfield bat, that's going to go a long way. So, Matt, Isaac, I asked you guys this question. How good can the Padres be in terms of record? I won't get into playoffs, but how good can they be in terms of record? Could they win the division?
Yeah, Matt, that's a great question. So one, I absolutely loved your point on the 5 innings with the pitchers, right? Like Jace Tingler last year, if any pitcher had it, like there's 2 runners on in the top of the 6th with no outs, he takes the pitcher out and he puts in our bullpen. He would never let the pitcher work, right? And it ended up coming to bite us in the ass when by August we had no bullpen left or anyone that could give us meaningful innings. We had, like you said, Ryan Weathers, Jake Arrieta, and Vince Velasquez starting games. Like that's not going to happen this year, like you mentioned. So I was talking to my little brother about this, who I do the show with, and we were talking, and I'm like, okay, so currently we are 28-14, correct? So 28-14, we've played some really, really good teams, and we've played some really, really bad teams. But what people don't understand, or at least need to understand more, is the good teams are good because they beat the bad teams. We absolutely murdered the Reds when the Reds were in probably their worst stretch that they'll be in all season. Because as a law of averages, they'll win at least 65 games this year. I don't see them losing that many games. But 6 of them they've already lost, and it's all to us. So we have those games. That's for the rest of the season. We never play the Reds again. But we have already won 6 games against those guys. Like, we keep beating up on the shitty teams enough. Sooner than later, you look and you're like, oh, like we're actually a pretty good team, right? All you got to do is be 500 against the Dodgers, be 500 against the good teams. If you go win a series, Brewers, right? If we win the series this weekend against the Brewers, like you just continue to win series. Sooner than later, you look, you're like, dude, we're like 30 games over 500. And I truly think right now, without the best player on our team, we're 28-14. Why can't we win 100 games, right? Like, especially with the arms that we have coming back. Does that mean we're going to win the division? I don't know. But honestly, as much as I would love to win the division, like as you could see by the Giants last year, shit doesn't matter. Like, hey, I would love to win the division, but I'd much rather make it to a World Series. I don't care if the Padres the Dodgers have won the division the last 8 years, right? What do they have to show for it? A Mickey Mouse ring, right? And don't get mad at me for saying it was a Mickey Mouse ring. You guys won the World Series, but it was a 60-game season. If the 60-game season happened last year, the Padres would have been the 1 seed. The Padres also ended up being 28 games out of first place at the end of the 162-game season. So it was a little bit of a weird season. I also understand they swept us, completely valid. It does help when our best pitcher was Zach Davies in the series. There's probably a little bit of a talent mismatch, but I truly think why can't this team win 100 games? Especially with, hey, the Giants had the season the Giants had last year was a bunch of scrappy players had their career years and it all just worked out, and good for them. But guess what? You can't expect the Darren Ruffs of the world to play like an all-star every single year. So when you look at a team like the Giants and you look at their lineup and you're like, wow, how are they winning these games? Sooner than later, they won't win these games. When their pitching doesn't pitch out of their ass and they get all the lucky breaks like they got last year. The Giants winning that many games last year screwed us because they would beat up on us. If we can beat up on teams like the Giants, if the Rockies are screwed with that Chris Bryant contract. They're going to be done for the next 10 years. Like the dumbest contract they could possibly do. They let go of Nolan Arenado, who Manny's better, but Nolan is really, really good. And I wish he was in the AL so I didn't have to worry about him, but Nolan Arenado is really good. And they paid the Cardinals to take their best player. They're an unserious franchise. So the Rockies are unserious. The Diamondbacks are playing pretty well, and they have a decent future. Not a great future, but they're not going to – we should win every series against the Diamondbacks. So sooner than later, you look at these series, you're like, dude, if we keep beating teams like the Brewers, like if we keep beating up on even good teams, like why can't we win 100 games? I think this team has – I truly believe every single game we have at least an even matchup with the pitchers. Today, Corbin Burns versus Blake Snell, I'd give the nod to Corbin Burns, but Blake Snell won a Cy Young as well, right? Like it's not like we're starting Ryan Weathers. No disrespect to Ryan, but like we're starting every game. We have a Nick Martinez versus Adrian Hauser. I'd take Nick Martinez. Mackenzie Gore versus majority of the pitchers in MLB right now. I'm taking Mackenzie Gore, right? Like, and you look at these matchups, you're like, unless it's a cold night in San Francisco, I'm taking Yu Darvish every night, right? And if you have the pitching matchup every night, and your lineup has an MVP candidate in it, sooner than later you start looking. You're like, dude, we should be favored in every game, or at least majority of the games. And if you're favored in every game and you start winning more and more games, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, not to mention in a month you're gonna have 2 MVP candidates in your lineup, and knowing AJ, he's gonna go after another one. I would almost put money on it. He's gonna go after another one. So yeah, man, everything with this Padres team is going right now. You mentioned the pitching. I didn't even bring up the pitching in my first time around, but this Padres pitching rotation has been everything we wanted. And I think I mentioned before the season, I think a lot of people were saying, no, we don't need a starter. We needed a starter really bad. Like, no matter what people were saying, there were health concerns. There were a lot of things going wrong for this Padres rotation that said it was night and day. We needed a starter. And who do we go out and get? A day after, we were all bummed out. I forgot what trade it was. I forgot who got traded or who got signed, whatever it was. The day after, we got Sean Manaea, career 3.81 ERA. And you hear 3.81, you're like, that's okay. But no, I don't think that does justice to how good Sean Manaea is. He is really good. And you look at this Padres team right now with runners in scoring position. They are, I believe it's 3rd in on-base percentage, I want to say. So they're really high. They're just doing everything right now. It's productive. You mentioned the Giants. There's no way they're going to win that many games with Darren Ruff and all those guys in the outfield. Darren Ruff cost them the game yesterday. He was horrible in our series too on defense, hitting wise. I mean, the dude's been a beast in May. But their pitching's not the way that it was last year either. The only guy that's really producing for them, and maybe not the only guy, I'm not the guy Junis that pitched the first game. I mean, he was good, but
Rodon's been good for them. But at the same time, as Carlos Rodon, I put him against any of our top 5 pitchers. I think we have just as I'm not scared of Carlos Rodon. I'm also not scared of this Dodgers pitching staff, bro. The Dodgers lineup is great. Don't get me wrong. Getting Freddie Freeman was a banger move, and it's absolutely bullshit that the Red Sox and the Braves couldn't pay their players and we had to get screwed for it, because if that didn't happen, you start looking at the Dodgers, you're like, they're really not that deep. But the Dodgers pitching staff, is it that good?
Nope.
Hot take. Kershaw's on the IL for a while, dude. Kershaw was looking great, but if you're not pitching, it doesn't matter. Trevor Bauer's never playing again. You got Walker Buehler's not having they're having a good year, but not like I'm not scared to face Walker Buehler. Julio Urias, all I can remember whenever I hear Julio Urias is Manny Machado taking him deep, like in that game against it, and how loud the stadium was when he took Julio Urias deep last year. Like that's all I care about when I hear Julio Urias. The starting pitcher for the Dodgers, I don't, the bullpen, Blake Trinan's out. Like what, like they're winning games, but are they that much better than the Padres?
Yeah, I mean, they basically do what we do is they beat up on bad teams. That's what you're supposed to do, right? I think last year, the reason we weren't winning or we didn't make the playoffs because we didn't beat up on those bad teams. We're under 500 against the Rockies, barely over 500 against the Diamondbacks. And now that we're doing it, it seems like other fan bases are criticizing us. It's like, no, I'm sorry, we're doing what we're supposed to do, right? Like, this is exactly what we're supposed to do. And the Padres are showing right now that they are one of the best teams in baseball. They're serious. This pitching staff is not what it was last year. And you look at, well, what if the same thing happens to them this year? It's so much different because last year we were going in with like two pitchers. To the whole back end of the season, it was like 2 or 3 pitchers, and that's it. This year we're going 7 deep. If 2 guys get hurt like last year, we still got 5 other guys. So it's a much different vibe this year, man. It's a much different team. And though they're not, this is a Fernando Tatis-less offense. So, of course, on paper, it doesn't sound as good. They are in the top half in the league in runs. They just smacked around the Giants, who are 4th in runs right now. Maybe that fell after yesterday. I'm not sure. But we smacked them around. So this Padres team is it's super fun to watch. I'm so happy watching these guys. And I pray to God, because last year, that back half of the season was the most depressing sports. I'm a fan of a couple crappy teams that have a history of heartbreak. That was the most heartbreaking to me. So I hope that doesn't happen again. But this whole thing shows me the Padres have a winning recipe right now, and that's going to be sustained.
Yeah, I'm totally with you, Isaac. I also got to bring up, me and Chase we weren't that big on bringing another starter in, and you were always like, "No, you got to bring another starter. You got to bring another starter." Now, I also think that if you would have said, "Hey, would you do this trade for Sean Manaea?" Yeah, we definitely would have said yes to the trade because I mean it made perfect sense. So that's kind of the other thing with that is like, yeah, you do that in a heartbeat. And I know Chase has always loved Sean Manaea as well. But yeah, I mean, Matt, you brought up 100 games. I mean, they're on pace to win 100 right now. I think before the year, I wouldn't have said 100. I probably would have said 90s, high 80s, low 90s would have been my guess. And that's considering where the outfield is. And it's not like the outfield has been where like a lot better. No, it's been bad. But they're still probably going to add an outfield bat. They're going to get Fernando back, and you start looking at, and I think our expectation was you make a wild card. Hopefully you win a series, you do a little bit of damage in the playoffs. That was kind of our thought. Like, have this be a season where you take those big steps. But they already look like they're taking those big steps a lot farther, I guess, along early on in the year. And I think the final thing I kind of want to just bring up is like, in terms of the starting rotation, Isaac, you said it. You lose 2 guys, you still got 5. It's a lot different when you have when last year you were banking on Dinelson Lamet and Adrian Morejon to be your starters early on in the year. Morejon has basically never pitched 60 innings in a year because he ends up having shoulder issues a lot. He's a reliever. You look at Dinelson Lamet. Dinelson Lamet was never in shape to play last year. Like after 2020, it seems like he should have got Tommy John. His elbow's cooked. So then you have that happen. They pitched Ryan Weathers about 3 months too long, and every time he come out, it basically looked like he was throwing batting practice because he was just placing fastballs right in the heart of the plate. And they would lose to the Diamondbacks. They would lose to the Rockies. That Reds team last year, if you would have played the second half Padres, the Reds probably would have beat them 4 out of those 6 games. That's how bad it was. So I think you got to look at it from a different, like, anyone that feels like it's going to kind of be like last year, the roster is not the same. Now, there's areas in last year's roster where they might have had a little bit more depth. I mean, Tommy Pham's not good, but Tommy Pham, like, that is another outfielder there. Like, there were other guys, but the pitching is night and day. And the bullpen right now isn't that great. Guess what? They're not being overworked, and guys are coming back. And if guys don't come back, what is the easiest thing to add at the deadline? A bullpen arm. Because there's always some team that doesn't need a guy at all because they're not winning, and they're like, all right, we'll give him to you for this guy, and it's not even that high level of a prospect. It makes sense. Like you see that every single year with any team that's contending. So I think they're going to end up being in a really good spot come the end of the year. But I think that's going to do it for this video today. Matt, I want to thank you again for coming on.
Thank you,
I know
boys.
Isaac's gotta take off to the game here in a second. See,
Have fun, brother.
hopefully see Snell ball out. But thank you for coming on, man. It's been real fun talking about the Padres. But I think that's gonna do it for today's episode. So thank you all. If you guys have not checked out Matt's show, make sure to do that. Matt, you want to plug it one more time before we hop
Yeah,
off?
yeah, absolutely. It's on Twitter, it's at Divine Gospel. But on Instagram and TikTok and Spotify and everything, it's Divine Sports Gospel. We actually have a giveaway right now for if you're interested to go to tomorrow's game. Just follow us on Instagram and tag 3 friends, and you'll get put in a raffle. And winner gets our 2 season tickets for tomorrow against Yu Darvish versus, I think it might be Eric Lauer, a former friend. So it should be a good one. So appreciate you both so much for having me on. I had an absolute blast talking to you. Isaac, have fun at the game. Matt, go Stangs. But thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you guys all for listening, and make sure to check out Matt's shows. Enter that giveaway. That'll be a lot of fun stuff. You said they're in left center. You said, right?
Yeah. So it's 2 rows back in left field, 132. So yeah, feel free. And then the picture on our Instagram is like a view of the seats. So I used my my high school Photoshop on that. So hopefully you appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk to you guys very soon.